Ayan na si Sir, si
Oh.
Doctor and Attorney.
And
Hello
he's
po.
still connecting. He's still connecting to the audio. Hindi pa connected, so we will wait. And he's using a still photo. Wala pa
Opo.
bang video?
Wala pa ata. Pero connecting na po, no?
Oh. Baka narinig na tayo. Meron na ba? Nawala. Yun, there he is.
Ayan na, yay!
Good evening po,
Good
Mr.
evening, sir.
Leomil Aportadera.
Aportadera. Yes, sir.
Okay. And well, Anna will give an introduction first to our audience about Leomil. Anna, please do the honors.
Opo. Pero before ko po i-introduce si Doctor and Attorney Yumel Aportadera po, let me give an introduction po para lang po ma-announce ko rin po yung ating 10 laureates of the 2021 awards for promoting Philippine-China understanding, para ma-mention ko po din yung iba kasi kasali kayo dyan eh. Okay po, mga kabansa, nagkaroon po ng search for the 10 laureates or awardees po ng awards o tinatawag na APPCU. So far po, dahil tatlo po yung process na yan, no? May preliminary ka, which is the elimination round, may second judging, and third judging, which is the final. Tapos bawat judging po, may 3 judges yan. So medyo may pinagdaanan po talaga ang ating mga naging awardees para po sila mag-aral. Medyo meticulous din po ang process. So ngayon po, gusto ko lang pong bigyan ng daan na mapaabot sa ating mga kababayan at sa mga kabansa na nakikinig po ngayon, both sa FB, sa live na to, at saka sa YouTube, na mayroon po 10 at it's breakdown po siya ng 3 categories. May Hall of Fame ka, may Outstanding, at may Major Contribution. Sa Hall of Fame, awardees are former First Lady Imelda Marcos and former Special Envoy of the Philippines to China and the Philippine Silk Road International Chamber of Commerce, Chairman Ambassador Francis Chua. Sa Outstanding awardees naman po, isa po ang ating maestro dyan din. Awardees of outstanding contributions are Philippine Association for Chinese Studies, PACS, President si Dr. Romel Banlawi, and then ang ating maestro po sa Global Talk News Radio at saka sa ating RP1 ang maestro si Ka Herman Laurel po, si Ka Mentong. And then kaisa para sa Kaunlaran Incorporation founder si Madam Teresita Angsi at saka yung Confucius Institute of UP Diliman, director po siya. Ito yung institute na language ng Chinese ang pinag-aaralan, mga cultural din, exchanges and all that. Si Dr. Lourdes Tanhueco Nepomuceno. Now, sa pangatlong kategory po, major contribution, syempre may kasama po ang ating ang ating isang maestro din po. Ang mga awardees po natin ay si Founding President of Peking University Overseas Students Alumni Association, si Professor Jamie Flor Cruz. And then, ang ating guest ngayon, na siya pong ating makakapanayam, physician and lawyer, both po siya, no? Lawyer na, doktor pa. And professor at the University of San Agustin College of Liberal Arts in Iloilo, si Dr. Mario Leonardo Emilio Aportadera, lawyer din po siya. And then, President and Editor-in-Chief of Sovereign PH, at syempre host po natin ngayon, and host po ng maestro, host din po ng GNN Opinion ngayon, ay si Mr. Ado Paglinawan, si Ka Ado. At saka yung 51 Talk brand ambassador po natin na si John Nicolo Fernandez. Sila po ang ating 10 APPCU awardees na kung saan po bibigyan sila ng parangal at sa isang awarding ceremony sa August 6. Yung po namin, yung awarding ceremony po, live stream po yan, makakasama nyo, pwede po kayo mag-tune in dyan. Sa live stream po yan sa Chinese Embassy po na webpage, yung FB page pala, tapos PPB4, and then APPCU page. Ang APPCU ay Association for Philippine-China Understanding. So huwag po niyong kalilimutan. 3:00 po yan ng hapon, pwede po kayong mag-join at makiisa po sa isang malaking pagdiriwang po at pagbibigay ng parangal sa ating mga awardees. So ngayon naman po, since ang ating guest ay si Sir Yumel, i-introduce ko lang po siya ng maikli, syempre para po maano po natin. Si Sir is si Dr. and Attorney Mario Leonardo Emilio Aportadera. I currently a faculty member of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences of the University of San Agustin, Iloilo. As a physician, he teaches BS Biology, courses such as Human Anatomy and Parasitology. And as a lawyer, he teaches pre-law courses such as International Law, which is my field, no? Political Theories and Introduction to Law. O parehas kami ng field sa kabilang dako. And then he graduated summa cum laude nung sa pag-aaral niya ng medisina at nag-aral siya sa University of Santo Tomas. And then he is both a practitioner of law and medicine. O, tignan niyo, ang hirap niyo, no? Pa-practice ng medicine, pa-practice ng law at the same time. Tapos, marami po siyang nasulat na may kinalaman po sa mga Philippine-China relation. Magpupromote ang understanding. Marami, magtatanungin natin siya mamaya. At the same time po, may isa siyang nasulat na medyo gusto kong malaman mamaya. Yung kinatawag pong Mama Had a Knack for Storytelling, which is some kind of a publication na imparted the story of his mother on how the Chinese think and their way of life. And Dr. and Attorney Aportadera was born to a Chinese mother and a Filipino father. So, magandang gabi po, sir. At congratulations po sa inyong pagiging awardee po. Bati po muna tayo sa ating mga kabansa at sa mga ka-awardees po ninyo. Kayong tatlo po ay mga paparangalan po namin pagdating ng August.
Thank you, ma'am, and hello to my fellow awardees. No? But before I start, I would want to do some corrections. Now, actually, I am on leave as a faculty member of the at the University of San Agustin since the COVID. I have a hard time with doing lectures through Zoom or online, so I opted not to. Only for the meantime, I'm still under contract. Secondly, I graduated summa cum laude in my pre-med course, BS Biology, and went on to finish medicine as an ordinary medical student at the University of Santo Tomas. Thank you.
Thank you for that, sir.
Good evening.
Kumusta po kayo?
Yeah.
Sige, Kamento.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Dr. Yomil. I'll just use your shorter name, Aportadera. Okay, now. Good evening, and I'm very happy to meet you. And I salute your achievements, being both a doctor and a lawyer, which is amazing. Ang dami mong oras na ibinuho sa pag-aaral, Yomil. But you come from, curiosity ko lang, a family of how many siblings?
We are 3 children of a Chinese mother and a Filipino father. Now, I'm the oldest, and I have 2 sisters. They are both of them. Both of my younger sisters are also physicians, practicing here in the Philippines.
Is any one of your parents a doctor also?
No, my mother was my mother was a teacher, and she had a PhD, a doctor in philosophy, and my father was a lawyer.
Nasa family ang pagiging lawyer.
Dr. Aportadera, in 2019, I think it was September, Kaado, our colleague and fellow awardee, and myself and several others like Ambassador Encomienda, we had a day in University of San Agustin. We spoke to the student body. The one who arranged and helped us arrange this symposium was Celso Cainglet. I don't know if you ever met him. He was assigned to the philosophy department for a while.
Philosophy department is under the same college, no? The Liberal Arts and Sciences, but I have not met because I'm a part-time teacher at the college, and I would only go there during my lecture hours, go home, considering my very tight schedule, my work and my obligations to my family too.
And how do you practice your medicine? What time of the day for medicine? What time of the day for lecture and so on?
I hold clinic in the morning. It's in a small town of Dingle, Iloilo. It's around an hour drive from the city where I am staying. I would usually leave clinic at around 1 to make it for my 3 p.m. Lectures at San Agustin. But I also would set appointments for my few clients. I just started a short while with my law practice. So it's just a matter of juggling my schedule. And to be honest, after some time, I thought I could not. It was very stressful to try to finish my clinic at Dingle just to make it for the 3 p.m. I would admit I would come very late, and I had to make apologies to my students who would wait for me.
Dingle. Now I remember that town, the name of that town. Yeah, Dingle. And do you have a copy of your book, your mama stories? Do you have a copy that you can show us and our audience social media?
Ma'am Anna may be aware of that. These publications, these stories were posted in my Facebook accounts.
Okay. I'll share it.
I have time. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
So it's not yet published in the form of a book.
Actually, if Ma'am Anna is now my Facebook friend, and you would notice, I have been writing about a lot of things and about different topics. So I also write about our travel stories when we would go out as a family. And it has been suggested to me, how about compiling them? I have started with a few and with several pictures, but I still have a long way to compiling everything that I wrote, which are all published and posted in the Facebook.
Okay. May question po ako, Dr. and Attorney Aportadera. Sir, ano po yung nag-inspire po sa inyo na to work on and also write and work on Philippine-China relation at the community level and in your community, no? Sino po yung inspiration nyo? Bakit nagkaroon kayo ng drive to work on this issue? Kasi, 'di ba? Alam niyo naman ang Pilipinas, 'di ba? Ang daming issue tungkol
actually, you mentioned that I'm still teaching. I teach international law, and China has a very prominent role in international law. So the real reason is that was just part, not really of advocacy, but voicing my opinion on matters that concern every Filipino as well. So even the so-called arbitral ruling, I would also explain it in my international law classes that there is an opt-out clause that is being glossed over by our media. And China cited that opt-out clause, a particular article wherein they would not submit to the jurisdiction of the tribunal trying the case filed by the Philippine government. So it was as if they would not abide. So what's all the hype? And as I noticed your Facebook account, I also campaigned for President Duterte, and I have been very supportive of administration. In fact, one of the stories I submitted was, thank you, President Digong, for making us safe, because that very pivot to China would not make us a target for any reprisal or any first strike from so-called enemies of other states. We have an international independent foreign policy which the Philippines should be a friend to all and not being used to fight the enemies of other states. Now, back to the question, I think it would be summarized in the article you mentioned. Mama had a knack for storytelling, because we grew up looking forward to a Saturday weekend afternoon of Mama's storytelling sessions with us all three children. And being born, my grandmother was a 14-year-old maiden betrothed to my grandfather, Guama, betrothed to Kuakong. She left China as a 14-year-old maiden to marry my grandfather. And these stories were handed down to my mother. And perhaps it was a way for her to serve as a link for a country that she was never able to visit, and for a place that my guama was never able to return despite her hopes of going back to China. So Mama had a knack of storytelling, and we would listen and now remember those many stories. And perhaps, as I would want to say, these stories of ordinary people, ordinary Chinese, ordinary Filipinos, can best serve as a link for better understanding between our two cultures and our two peoples.
Ano po yung mga usual, like, can you give us a bit of one very memorable story po ni mami niyo po, ng mama niyo po, ng mother niyo po, na hanggang ngayon po, it serves as a, always in your thoughts, na serves as a inspiration pa rin, na like your persistence in, at your own community, you're promoting friendship between two peoples and two societies po, no? At the level po tayo kasi ng peoples to people.
The first thing that would come into my mind about these stories was the one of stories of a newly married couple whose husband was conscripted to build the Great Wall and died during the process. And as usual, the China is like every myth, it was the wailing of that widow that some portions of the Great Wall broke down, and these remains of her beloved husband were found so that she could give him a decent and proper burial. So, but Mama had a way of interconnecting the story of Great Wall, because the Great Wall defined the Chinese psyche. Now, China had no imperialistic or colonial plans. If you look at the Great Wall, it defines the Chinese psyche. Leave them to their own. Leave the Chinese to their own, and they would feel safe behind their Great Wall. So she would connect that thinking, and that is also why that I will never buy the idea being circulated in mainstream media of what so-called aggressor stance of China, because China, they had their opinion, they had their stand. Is China, every action of China would be to defend its interest, its sovereignty, its place, its area. So that's the connection. She would tell us a story. She would relate it to like contemporary events. No, she died before this arbitral ruling, so she wasn't able to mention about arbitral ruling. But like that, the Chinese were never, and in fact, if I said, they never invaded any country. The war against Vietnam was a punitive action, wherein they would just withdraw after some time. Although they got back Paracel Islands.
Yeah. Well, it's very thrilling to listen to you, at nagtataka ako kung bakit ngayon lang namin kayo naririnig at dapat noong pa.
Oo, dapat matagal na, no? Dapat na-invite natin siya sa mga program natin. Matagal na.
Was it coincidental or providential that I saw your I think notice for invitation for nomination, and I shared it with the one who nominated me. Is a former dean at the University of San Agustin, and she is a very close friend of my mother. So I told her, because she would comment every time I post in the Facebook China, about Philippine affairs, including President Duterte. And I passed her the nomination, and I to ask her what were my chances. Oh, she would nominate me and give it a try, and I think I got a chance to be your guest in your show, and a chance to air my side, to air my opinion on China and Philippine relationships.
And you are, shall I say, an expert in international law. You focused on that, and so you have very good basis for expressing all these observations and opinions about the issues, legal issues, if they may be legal between China and the Philippines. So I'm very glad to hear that. Are you able to bring this to class also? Is this a subject matter that you discuss in class?
Yes, part of international law is one important aspect or tenet of the international law is the equality among the states. And I also wonder why mainstream media gloss over one particular fact. It was not the Philippines that was the first third world country to go up in an international tribunal against a so-called superpower. They forgot that uh, Nicaragua and the so-called contra crisis, contra controversy, if I may call it, wherein Colonel Oliver North was involved, and the country got a favorable ruling against the United States, and it was never implemented. Because who would implement it? The United Nations. These 5 superpowers have veto powers. Nobody could enforce whatever ruling. So we have to be realistic. But although behind all this noise and raucous, one could see, especially as a Duterte supporter, that all these issues raised by the opposition was just trying to find and probe a way to hit at the present administration. It's an unrealistic plan to enforce and implement that ruling. Even if you read the tribunal ruling, this is non-enforceable. Nobody could enforce them. Non-binding.
Yeah. Well, that's very comforting to know that you were voicing that all the way down there in the south, while
Yeah,
we here in Luzon were voicing it here. And of course, you have repeatedly mentioned the mainstream media. Talagang very frustrating ang mainstream media. Talagang hindi lumalabas itong what you have been pointing out. No? And I can feel your frustration with the mainstream media. Pero sa Iloilo, in your area, how's the media been treating the issues? Sunod-sunod lang sila sa mainstream media?
Actually, the so-called China issue in my place in Iloilo is about Sinovac. They would rant on the efficacy, but they never mention, they gloss over the fact that safety. And as a physician, that is where I can enter, and I can share, I can admit, and I can honestly say that in a way, in my town, among my patients, I have been able to convince about get the vaccine that is available, and with more than half of the vaccines in the Philippines came from China. Sinovac, get it now. So, and I'm grateful and I'm happy to share with you that yes, my patients and other people because from what they learned from my patients, what I told my patients, and I also posted that in my Facebook about after having my first job. I think I submitted that with the nominator, submitted that to Ma'am Ana, no, yung job lang. Because I mentioned that because of the so-called, how do you call that? Latent racism against China made. And I would be very vocal about it. People in the streets, I know to speak their language, so I would use their language in a mild and very polite manner. That even your lights, even your bulbs, they come from China. And the most important thing is the live inactivated virus technology is almost over 100 years, given in polio, given in other immunization. So why harp on the so-called efficacy? And in fact, the news this morning, Israel is getting a surge in, and I got it from Global Times. No? This news, Israel is having a surge in new COVID cases, despite being the highest vaccinated rated country with an American brand, Pfizer.
Yes, well,
But
I'd like to tell you, Leomil, Dr. Leomil, that our colleague here, Ado Pagminaon, has written a book, and I'd request Ado to prepare one copy to send to you. Ado, do you have a copy before you so you can show at least on the screen? The title is "There is no vaccine for a virus called racism." There.
yes,
yeah.
I'll be happy to receive it. Or in fact, I hope to meet you and you can give it on August 6th.
Yeah, yeah.
With dedication.
Ado, you have any question for Leomil, Dr. Leomil?
Well, I'm becoming a fan. I'm listening intently, and I just couldn't imagine we went to Iloilo with Ambassador Encomienda on invitation nitong ginawa ni Celso Cainlet with sino pa ba nagpunta doon? Si Austin. Si Austin.
General Victor Corpus was with us. General Victor Corpus.
General Victor Corpus. And maybe we could do a repeat of that comment. And this time we will have Dr. Aportadera with us. No? This is really.
Yes, I'll be happy, and perhaps if after COVID that will be another batch of students, I can help out if you need at least in San Agustin, no, in the University of San Agustin, for the physical presence this time. After COVID, we hope to do away with virtual meetings, virtual assemblies. No.
Yeah, well, we had that symposium in your auditorium there at the University of San Agustin. We met your president, the priest, I forget the name at this time.
Father Comendador, sir. Father Frederick
Comendador. Now I remember because I asked him if it's related to General Comendador, the Air Force General. This we should have another project to visit you there. Have another symposium on the issue of Philippine-China relations, and maybe also on the vaccine issue, because post-COVID-19 we can discuss these things. No? And you would be the star of the show there. We'd like to watch you there.
And I'm willing to help facilitate. I'll ask people around about the possibility of that. Once your schedule also allows, if several of you, we will have to fit in that all of you can be available.
Yeah. And I think this time Anna will be joining us to Iloilo.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And yes, and dinner will be on me. And I'll see you around the place. I don't know where were you brought around when you were here in Iloilo? They said that I mentioned food because they say it is said that Iloilo is famous for its food. So we'll go do some restaurant hopping.
Yeah. Well, we went to this one place which was semi-open air and a view of the sea. And then we bought some. Is that honey? Kaado? Was that honey? I don't know what it's called. No, I forget what it's called. But I'm sure you know, Leomil. It's sold by the vendors. And what do you call that?
Yung diwal. They mentioned diwal. It's because it's like a tang.
No, that's a seafood.
Seafood.
Yung molasses.
Yes. Molasses, yes. Molasses.
Anong tawag niyo doon?
Molasses. The word is escaping me. Molasses.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So 2022, we'll go and see you there.
Yeah, now that you have my email, I think you have my Facebook account. Yes, and I'll be happy to see you around and meet you here.
Yeah,
Sir, I have.
go
Sige,
ahead,
sir.
Dana, go
No,
ahead.
no. I have a question to Dr. Lumel about the award. What do you think, sir, is the significance of this kind of award, and how would you encourage other as an awardee, no? How would you encourage our kababayan, especially ang ating mga audience po, na there is value and there's value and importance in promoting understanding between the Philippines and China, no? Given also no that China is a rising power no in the world. It's a superpower already economically, but it's still rising at the moment. Di pa nga consolidated ata ang kanyang gains, no? At saka yung niya. So how would you give a bit of message to our kababayan, especially the younger ones, na instead of creating conflict or propagating negative propaganda and all that against China, is much more forging that kind of friendship and understanding. As someone who's been who's a alam mo yun, your mother has imparted this the Chinese way of thoughts and thinking, while you have a father who also is a Filipino. So kumbaga you have both, you have the best of both worlds, kumbaga po.
The best of both worlds, the best of both thinking and thoughts. But going back to that, how to avoid war. Actually, you have appraised me. You have told me about the acceptance speech to be in just 1 minute. So I'm trying to. I have prepared. I have started with it, and I would quote a line from the book of Scott Turow, Ordinary Heroes. It's about a World War II move. It's about a World War II setting, and it's about war. And in fact, some scenes were very depicted. It has been also it has been shown as a movie, the novel. It tells. I think I can quote about it. Who are we? But the stories we tell about ourselves, particularly if we accept them. That's the opening line. I have not yet finished. I've just started. I believe that it is not only the stories of ordinary heroes, but ordinary people like my guama, like my mother, stories. Because the stories among the stories of my mother was about an uncle who joined the anti-Japanese guerrilla, Chinese anti-Japanese guerrilla based in Central Luzon during the war.
Oh,
so
wow.
he was telling Mama, and Mama would tell that story to us, how in many instances it was the Filipino, ordinary folks, not heroes, ordinary folks who sheltered them, provided them food, and protected them from the enemy, from the Japanese. And there is no resistance. It was a common human band fighting against a common enemy and oppression. And so, going back, if not for the external forces and external influences that try to make us fight their enemy, their so-called threat to their sovereign hegemony, a step is to share these stories that I like to write, share these stories with ordinary people, because ordinary people from both sides of the South China Sea, ordinary people in China, ordinary people, they have their stories. And it tells of their stories tell of common human bands of humanity. When they were sheltered by Filipino folks, did not ask, were you Filipinos? Are you Filipinos? You are our friends. You are fellow men. You must be protected from harm. And that was one story that also I remember from the stories of my mother. So in a way, more interaction, more sharing of stories. And of course, we are fortunate to be in these states that our president is very vocal. It would be a massacre. And like what happened in Scarborough, the previous administration was banking on the Mutual Defense Treaty, and when there was a standoff, the other superpower would just tell them to withdraw. So how many times have the Filipinos been taken for a ride? Aguinaldo was made to wait outside the walls of Intramuros because Spain would not surrender to the Indios, but rather have a mock battle of Manila Bay to justify their surrender to a white colonial power that was the white emerging colonial power, the United States, towards the end of the 19th century. In Bataan, the busting bastards, mostly Filipinos, were made to wait for a mile-long convoy. Now, if Filipinos would open their eyes, what happened to the fall of Vietnam, fall of Saigon, and now more recent events, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, are they going to bet on the American? Well, the U.S. The U.S. is withdrawing from Afghanistan. Imagine how many visas they had to issue to the former civil servants, translators, who fear retribution once the Taliban rises in power again, comes in power again. So I think it's about history. It's about more contacts, sharing, and I feel, and I also believe that from the stories I tell, because it will overcome the stereotype held against the Chinese. The stories I tell, because most of my friends are Filipinos, most of my Facebook friends are Filipinos, most of my students are Filipinos, and when they see the sincerity in my explanation, at least that's a first step forward, no? And the so-called misinformation of mainstream media, I call them corporate media, it has also some influence on the general mindset.
That's why we need more like you to like I am just very amazed now. He thinks like us.
Yeah.
We have the same wavelength. Exactly, I'm so happy to meet Dr. Leonel.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you.
Yeah, I have an article about Afghanistan, exactly as you described your own perception of what's happening in Afghanistan. Of course, I do the same parallel about Vietnam. And maybe if we can get your email, we'll send you some of these articles that we write also. Ado here is our editor for sovereignph.com, a site, news site and a commentary site. Ado, maybe you can describe your Sovereign PH a bit for Dr. Yomil. Can you show? You are going to show.
Probably we can also publish some of the writings as well,
Yes,
no?
precisely.
Of Dr. Yumil in Sovereign
Yes.
PH, especially those that talks about Philippine-China understanding, clarifying issues, and things like this, because they are very important in promoting people-to-people relation between the two countries, no?
I think you can see some of the pages on the screen, Dr. Lionel. These are some of the articles that come out on the site. So we hope to have a picture of you, and we can put your articles there in the Sovereign page.
Yes, Mom. It will be my honor, Mom, and and I will consider it as that I will be very privileged to share and to have them published in your sovereignph.com.
Yeah. Ado, our editor, you have any?
In fact, meron na ako ditong meron na akong na capture. One of Dr. Aportadera's work here, he was with Lourdes Apotadera at Muchanyu Great Wall, and the good doctor had some insight, starting with George Orwell, who controls the past controls the future, who controls the present controls the past. So I would like to get your permission dahil ipapublish ko ito in one of the Balitaan Bayan. That's where I get contributions. And by the way, we also have a magazine. Ito yung latest issue, cover si Bongo. And in the inside pages, meron ding article si kamentong vaccine, diplomacy, or humanitarianism. And lately, we have been experimenting on going on internet TV. So tri-media na ang sovereignph.com. And with your permission, I would reprint this, edit it a little bit to fit the style of the newspaper. But definitely, I will send you my messenger kung ano yung lumabas, no, Doctor. So, ayan. So, ano na tayo. We are now umbilically connected.
So yes, sir. I expressly give my permission and consent to have my publications published with proper credits as author. Thank you, sir. It's an honor. It's a privilege. And as I could not promise anything right now, but now that we have connected, I can try to do some write-up on this arbitral ruling, especially on the opt-out clause that China cited not to submit to the jurisdiction of the tribunal. There are many instances about this opt-out clause because of maritime delineation, like that what is happening in the Gulf of Mexico, because there is also an overlapping of the so-called EEC in that Gulf. So, and it's very rich in oil. So that's also one issue that could be related to this arbitral ruling. But I have still to do some more research so that it will be very, very worthy of space in your publication, sir.
We look forward to that.
Yes, sir. Just give me time. I think after the August 6th affair, because as I told Ma'am Anna, I'm based in Iloilo. I still have to process this ever-changing IATF rules. But I just learned that if I would just show that notification, I would be considered as an APOR. I could do away with mandatory quarantine because I'm fully vaccinated and with Sinovac, and after I think a negative swab test, so no need for quarantine. That was what I heard last week. So I don't know if it would change after July 15 again.
Have you been issued the vaccination card?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I have it, and in fact, after my first vaccination, I also posted in Facebook, and I think it's with Ma'am Anna the link, no, about I called it jab lang,
Yes.
jab lang.
So Anna, Dr. Leomil, that means on August 6 ba? August 6 ang ceremony?
Yeah, August 6.
You will be
August 6.
Manila?
Yes, he will come.
Okay.
I'm arranging it actually for him. We're talking about it, but don't forget to bring the card, the vaccine card. No?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. We need it in every way going here. So yes.
Doc, what do you recommend if traveling to the distant provinces by plane or by boat is safer?
Distant from Manila to the provinces right now, or
because of this COVID virus?
So I saw your vaccination card. You're fully vaccinated.
Yeah.
I would still suggest not only safer but more convenient is to take it to travel by air, by plane.
Okay.
So the travel time is short, no?
More convenient, shorter, like that. And you don't know because of many arbitrary interpretation of the so-called IATF guidelines. Once you go into a control checkpoint, some would interpret it this way. They would not accept this. They would like that, even though you would try to explain. And it would take time explaining. You would be just passing through like that. And plus the weather. You don't know. We are now, I think, in the wet season. And what if you take it by Roro and you will get stranded because of, Pagasa? The Coast Guard immediately cancels travel by sea once there is a typhoon signal.
Okay. Where will Dr. Aportadera be staying when he's in Manila, Anna? Do you have a place here?
We're booking the same hotel because so that he will be safe. Because it's not safe to go anywhere around, no? At least he will be safe there. And then for 2 nights, so that's how it is. Because he is not from Manila, so we need to take care of him.
Are you bringing Mrs. Aportadera with you for that occasion?
She wants to join me, and I think she is. She has searched online, and she would wear a cheongsam for the occasion. She's Filipina. I'm married to a Filipina, so. But she and my daughter, I would like to call. I have turned them into Sinophile, China loving, China appreciating.
Sinophile. Oh, wow. Sinophile is Chinese Filipino, right?
Sinophile is
Sino is for China, and
Chinese,
Sinophile is Sinophilic, love for China, love appreciation for China, appreciation for Chinese. Oh yeah, Sinophilic, appreciation for things Chinese, no? The culture. It has more than 3,500 years of history, of culture, of literature. So these were the stories my mother told us.
Yeah.
So
actually, Dr. Aportadera could have a regular space Sovereign PH. My regular column or space in Sovereign PH is entitled Asian Century. And as you were discussing Sinophile or Sinophilic matters, I want to expand that to Asia. Because Asia is really the most exciting civilization. It's the oldest, if you include Indian and the Chinese civilization, for example, Buddhism was borrowed from India. And of course, one of my perceptions in this stage of our history is that the West, particularly the US, is trying to divide Asia and trying to reestablish its hegemony with the Asia pivot of Obama in 2011, trying to come back to Asia to reestablish its hegemony and restore their domination. But anyway, I just wanted to bring up to expand the idea of love of things Chinese to broader love for Asian culture and civilization.
Yes. One book that I had reread several times. I don't know if you're familiar with that. The Chinese Machiavelli, written by Dennis Tador. So it shows the art of statecraft from the Chinese, and that they learn the past so that they would not commit the same mistake. We are at this stage at around 200 years ago when China became an envy of the Western powers. And imagine they ran out of silver to pay for Chinese silk and porcelain, and they would sell to China opium. And of course, China, exercising its sovereignty, would seize those opium and throw them to the sea, and that started the several opium wars. Eventually, that process, that century of humiliation, has also a personal connection to our story, the story of my family, because that was the time that the ordinary Chinese people bore the burden of reparation payment, and they had to take their so-called leap of faith and tap it sa patalim, like my great-grandfather Ong Lat did. They took with several clansmen from a small village in Fujian, took a wooden hull rickety boat across the South China Sea, risking everything just for the opportunity of the Philippines. And that was you always relate this story to world events. The century of humiliation, the ordinary people bore the burden of reparation payment, the higher revenues, to pay these Western powers, not only during the Opium War, but also in the subsequent Boxers' Revolution. And so, in a way, we connect. Now, going back to yourself, the Asian century, yes, everything has come to full circle. And as I like to tell in my lectures to my students, that just over 30, 50 years ago, Japan was an economic power, was threatening the economic hegemony of America. But what Japan did not have that China has was a powerful military. So they left their defenses they rather rely on American, and they could not in world states. You have to dangle the carrot, but carry a big stick as well. So that is the difference. China, by all means, China, the second most powerful country militarily, it cannot beat the US right now, but the US cannot afford to wage war against China. And precisely that is why I admire our president, is because he does not want us to form the outer rim of defense chain against a so-called threat to American interests and hegemony. Why allow the US missiles here aimed at China when we are not enemies of China? So it goes back to, yes, Asian century, and hopefully within our time, yes, Asian, including the Filipinos, will have our place in the sun, away from Western domination, Western interference.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so amazed. I'm just listening.
There's a
We have
comment.
one maestro in our midst right now.
Yeah. There's a comment here from Joven Federio, Chinese and Filipinos ay galing sa isang lahi. Sabi niya, Shemites, But it's true. We come from I frequently bring this up when I'm asked, and sometimes nasty and hostile commenters to my post would say, why don't you go back home to China? And so paliwanag ko, actually, the most popular, respected anthropological theory of the origins of the Malay-Indo race is the out of Taiwan theory. That it's from South China, South Indochina, that the population moved towards Taiwan, and Taiwan down to Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and so on. So totoo, iisang lahi po tayo. If you go back mga 10, 20, 12,000 years back, and many people don't understand that and don't know that. And so tama si Joven, Joven ba ang nabasa ko, Federio, that we are one and the same race actually. But anyway, ito ang rich discussion that we would like our audience to hear, to follow. And it's very nice to have a discussion with you, Dr. Leomil na lang. Aportadera. Okay, medyo mahaba yun eh. Aportadera. So this enriches our national discourse on these issues, which as you always mentioned, the mainstream media is trying to prevent a holistic discussion of all these issues. Anyway, back to you, Dr. Anna and Doc, any comments?
Yeah, on my side po, I would just, si Kado muna.
Right now, I'm behaving like an editor. Nakikinig ako at taking down notes.
On my side, I'm just amazed, of Dr. Yumel, the expanse, yung knowledge niya about history between countries and of the world, and also how you impart this to your students. I think that's why, one of the reason also why I think based on the three process of judging, Dr. Yumel was chosen as part of the awardees is precisely because when you talk about his it's much more on the grassroots in the sense that he imparts these things to his students and to the community that he is into right now, where he lives, no, and surrounded by many people as well, no, mga Bisayas, mga Iloilos, mga estudyante, and then imparting this knowledge and trying to let them understand world dynamics as against to Philippine-China relation. So I think that's one of the reasons. That's, I think, very important, no? Especially students, because I'm also a professor, by the way, so I understand how it's important, no, to make it sure that your student have the right way of framework, or paradigm in understanding issues that affects the country and the whole world. I think that's very important. So I think that's your important contributions as well in and on the issue of Philippine-China relations. It's 7:50, so I would like to ask for our guest to say your closing message po sa ating mga nanonood at sa ating mga kabansa. Marami pong nanonood sa inyo right now.
Ma'am Ana, Sir Ado, and Sir Herman, I thank you for the opportunity. I am a son of China, born out of a Filipino father. My opinions my opinions raised over current events, especially affecting our country, not only vis-a-vis China, does not make me less of a Filipino. Not that I love the Philippines less, but it is for the greater good. We have been under Western colonial powers, and now is a chance to have our place in the sun. The United States, Spain as a colony, would never allow but only use us. Now is our chance, and that is why I hope by telling these stories, the stories of my mother, of her mother, my grandmother, of our family, of our clan, who crossed and at great risk the South China Sea to settle in the Philippines for opportunities. Our country does not have a Statue of Liberty, but there are many Emma Lazarus who would raise that lamp and open and welcome us with open hands. Our country, our family, especially from my mother's side, has very, very many stories about the kindness and hospitality of the Filipino people. It's just unfortunate that mainstream media, would rather forget the interaction of kindness and hospitality that the Filipinos showed, not only to the Chinese, even to the Indians doing their business. We are a great people in our values shared with fellow human beings. So I hope for a better understanding of Philippines and China for our people. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sir.
And we'll do this again one of these days.
Yes, sir. Just let me just as I told Ma'am Ana, the available time would usually be at around this time. So I'll be happy to join you, and it's my honor, sir. It's my honor, sir.
It's our honor too and privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations po at congratulations sa dalawang maestro natin. Ang tatlong awardees ay nagsama-sama sa isang programa. Diba? What a great day. What a great Wednesday. Thank you po.